All right, so let's start with the video portion. So how is everybody? Welcome to DES 113. We are on week 3, if you can believe it. I think time has just flown by already, but it seems to do that with these mods. So it's good to see everybody. I've got a full house today. How was your Labor Day weekend? Good, no wrecks is normal, that's good. That's always positive and there's no accidents. Anybody else? Brienne went fishing. That's fun. Oh, that's relaxing. That's nice. I love being out on the water. It doesn't matter what I'm doing as long as I'm one with the water. I love that. That's great. Anybody else? What did you guys do? No one did anything? I would think there'd be a lot of barbecuing going, or maybe just hanging out with friends or family. Let's see, what did I wind up doing? We went to downtown. They were having this huge event, the Gold Rush event, since we're in California, and it was crazy at a madhouse, and everybody and their dog was there. But we got to do a little boat cruise on the water, so that was cool. That was fun. Nora babies that are 18-month-old. Oh, that's so fun. I have a son that age. It's a fun month. It's a fun age. Then Jones got promoted, started the first day as a manager. Hey, congratulations. That's exciting. Very nice. And Sandy studied. Excellent. Well, I'm glad everybody had fun. We're actually going to be jumping into lecture, but it sounds like everybody had a decent weekend. Yeah, I think so too. I think the fact that we didn't have to do school or work was enough. It didn't matter what I was doing. No, that's wonderful. I'm glad everybody here had a decent week. So we're going to jump right into lecture, as you can see. Whoops, let's see. Let's close video, and we will start with the PowerPoint slides. We'll get right into it. You know what? Actually, we're going to shift gears. Everybody here, we're going to go over the quizzes because I like doing that while I have a full house. So let's do that first. Sorry for the back and forth. Okay, so we're on week 3. Has everybody done the quiz for today? Okay, yes, yes. Okay, so we'll start for Wednesday. We'll do Wednesdays. So we'll look at Wednesday's quiz. I like to go through the quizzes so that everybody knows what the answers are. I sometimes get them wrong, so you can learn from my mistakes. This one is about funding and tuition. As a graduate, when will the interest start on my educational plan loan if I have one? 30, 60, 90. So I'm going to go look through 30 days. Let's see, begin to accrue 90 days after graduation. Looks like it's 90, so I'll go with that. We'll see if that one's right. So 90 is the answer right there. Okay, good. Let's try another one. And let's look at Thursdays. So you'll definitely want to watch this video. It gives a lot of interesting pointers about typefaces, but it does ask blank typefaces are similar in appearance. Is it align typefaces, avoid typefaces, only use, remove typefaces that are similar in appearance? So when you're laying out a layout, like with your invitation, if you were laying it out, did you want typefaces that were similar, or did you want to avoid those? You want to avoid them. That's right. You wanted contrast. That's what we were talking about. So contrast, if you're going to use a sans serif font, you definitely want to use a supporting serif font to help you out there. So the answer is avoid typefaces that are similar in appearance. Good job, Brianne. All right, and Fridays. Let's go through this one. It's a short week. Tuesday makes the week short. Same video. Use typefaces that are wider width for readability. Is this true or false? Norma says true. Brianne says false. That's tricky. Let's go with true and let's see what the answer is. So the answer is false. You want to use, or I'm sorry, typefaces that are wider width are harder to read. So it doesn't help readability at all. All right. Good job. We had mixed answers there. All right, and then the same video asked the question, the size that is most readable is 8 to 12 points. Would you agree? True. For any font, the size that is most readable is 8 to 12 font. So am I seeing some trues? Hi, Kaya. Thanks for coming. So let's go with true. Let's see if that one is correct. 5 out of 5. Excellent, guys. Okay, so we'll stop there. Sunday is all up to you, but you've got Tuesday through Saturday to get you through, and hopefully that helps make these quizzes just a little bit easier. So I'm going to shift gears here. So let's talk about week 2, everybody, since I've got a lot of people here, which I'm so happy to see. Tell me about week 2. How did it go for you? Difficult assignments? Was it challenging enough? Did you feel like it was just right? Something you could handle? I know we were kind of racing the holiday weekend. Loved it? Okay, good. Oh, hi, Kaya. Okay. I didn't put the two together. So you were Jones and now you're Kaya. Or is it Kia? Is that how you say it, Kia? Kia. Okay, sorry. Kia. I will remember that. Okay, good. So everybody's feeling a little good. Okay, so here's the thing. So I gave you lots of feedback, right? Because I'm required as an instructor to give you critique your work, even if it was perfect work. I still give suggestions. Some of you guys did excellent, and I didn't really need to give much feedback. So I gave what I could, just made some suggestions of what you could change there. If I did give you a lot of suggestions, then I want you to go back to the drawing board and kind of figure out how you can implement those. I left it kind of vague, but I want you to kind of pull from the lectures, things that we've been learning. We've been talking about terminology like contrast, proximity, especially hierarchy, order of hierarchical elements. I can't say that. Hierarchical elements on the page. You want things to be in order. You want things to make sense. And you want, as you move down the page, the content or the size gets smaller and smaller because it's less and less important. And we want to feature and make the star of the show the more important information on your page. So if you have any questions, come to the multi-session on Thursday. I can help answer. I can be a little bit more specific with given the time that we have to grade everybody's work. I'm not able to get as specific as I'd like. But if you are a little confused with the feedback, just let me know. Does anyone have questions? I kind of just spewed out what was kind of on my mind as I glanced at your work, as I looked over it. I just wanted to make sure I got something to you in time because you'll have to be, I think you're going to be making changes on it later. So any questions about the feedback? Did you guys have any questions about the assignment? Okay. So here's the thing. If you didn't like your grade that you got, I always offer an opportunity to make changes and resubmit. However, I do kind of put a little not a disclaimer, but kind of it's predicated on you coming to the multi-session or going to the Student Success Center, okay? You need somebody, some instructor to look over it and give you feedback before you submit it. So you need to go over my comments and then go take it to me or to another instructor or tutor in the Student Success Center, and they'll look over it. Then you could submit it, and the Student Success Center emails me as soon as you attend. So they know already that you're there, and then they let me know. They let me know what you went over. So you don't have to worry about emailing me. I'll get an automatic email, but that's how you get your grade readjusted, okay? And you come in during the multi-session, I can give you feedback on the spot. You can receive a grade on the spot. If you wind up going the other route and going to the Student Success Center, which is an excellent route to go, Wanda Bryant as well is also counts. You'll get your grade readjusted there as well. It just might take a little longer. So just let me know if you're interested in doing that. Shoot me an email, and then we can move from there. But Thursdays is my open multi-session. Just come and go as you want. There is no structured lecture. It is just open. Basically my lab hours. If you wanted to come and talk about your assignments in the past or future, or need help on work if you want some one-on-one time. It's just an excellent way to kind of meet with me, and we can go over anything, figure out ways to improve your grade. And I like to offer as many opportunities as I can for you to do that. So, and I'm a firm believer in makeup work. I feel like you learn more when you apply the changes and the feedback to your assignment and then resubmit it. I feel like you learn more that way than just getting a grade and you're stuck with that grade. So hopefully that helps everybody in the end. And if not, at least you'll get to know the Student Success Center and me a little bit more. So that's the goal. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about more rules. During week 1 and week 2, we kind of touched on some rules of typography. And in this case, we're going to be talking about a little bit more. And it's important because you're going to be designing, well, you designed your invitation, and you'll kind of notice some of these rules pop up. If I ever commented in your feedback, you'll kind of see, oh, don't apply a stroke. We don't apply stroke to text, and little things like that. And it'll tell you the why behind it. And so if you have any feedback that you have received, hopefully this will kind of clear it up and kind of remind you of where we're supposed to be when we are, how we're supposed to lay things out as designers, and that there's rules and structure. I always say there's a method to the madness. I feel like design and art are very scientific and very specific, and there are guidelines and rules that do kind of guide us along. So without further ado, our main goal as designers, you and me, is to create something that's legible. Now, when I say legible, what does that mean to you? I've kind of got the definition up here. When I say it's not legible or this is great legibility, what am I saying? Yeah, it's easy to read or it's hard to read, right? Legibility is kind of that term that I use to kind of gauge, is something easy to read or is it something very hard to read? And you can make something legible or non-legible in very different ways. But it's just how we can take those individual words and letters and make them easier to read or harder to read. And then readability, the questions we want to ask ourselves: does the quality of the page make it easy to read? Is it inviting? Is it pleasurable to the eye? Does it invite us in to want to read more or look at more? So that's our goal as designers, is to not only catch someone's attention, but to be able to keep it and keep people intrigued by our designs alone. Yeah, Brianne, the video that went over the 19 rules, we're going to kind of go over that here. It said you can't break the rule until you know the rules. And that is exactly right. You're going to learn the rules and you're going to follow the rules. And then once you get really good at the rules, then you'll be able to break them. And you'll know how to break them in a good way. And so as a designer, it's really important to know the rules so that we don't break them, or if we do break them, we break them appropriately. So let me pull up the video I wanted to share with you guys. Let's see if I can, it's all set up here. And then just let me know if you have difficulty hearing it. I'll try to get the sound quality up for you. One second. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear it.
Hi. One of the most important things I've been reiterating here and there in the videos is the idea of creating and working with readable text treatments. And here I'd like to show you a PDF of several different ones, some of which work better than others, and they work in ways that you might not be used to seeing. So we're going to take a look at some of these different approaches here. This PDF uses some clever gibberish text, which is generated from, there are several websites you can go to plug in keywords, and it will randomly generate gibberish sentences. So it's kind of fun to look at. But here, it's been used just for the type treatments. The first one is done in an Old English, old style typeface. Now, generally speaking, this is considered somewhat illegible because it's so decorative and it's so heavy and condensed. However, the treatment here is not that bad. You'll notice that it is great contrast, black on white. The line length is a little bit long. I would have made it shorter, but you'll notice that it has some decent leading. So this is actually something that is readable. So if you ever had to use this typeface, knowing that spacing around the letters is of prime importance, as is a short line length and a good contrast. The next couple paragraphs use sans serif and serif, respectively, for the same treatment. And it looks like they're the same size. And you can see the differences in the two serif and sans serif. And the sans serif one looks a little larger. So I would say for better readability, the type size on this one could go down, but I would keep the same leading. And as with all of these, I think the line lengths are a tad too long, and I would make them shorter just for better readability. But generally speaking, these two are pretty good for readability. The next couple are not. The bold, the all caps, not as easily read. The bold gets dark. It has a dark text color, as we say. It's not bad in some ways because it's upper and lower case. It's got decent leading, but we try to avoid that in body copy. Bold is just too much. All caps, you can hopefully immediately see that this is tough to read. All the letters are the same height. It just makes it tough, and the long line length doesn't add to this. So we do avoid bold and all caps in paragraph text. The next sections are what we call reversed text, any text that is lighter than its background. Now, this can be a very effective treatment for headlines, for subheads, for really short passages, but even for something this long, no, it's too much. It makes the eyes tired after a while. And here, in this example, which uses the font Papyrus, you'll notice that the ascenders and descenders are starting to bump into one another, which says that the leading is not deep enough, and this would need to be reset. And some designers feel, by the way, that the font Papyrus is so overused that it's a good one to avoid anyway. This next one is quite good. It's a light green background with black text, and I think generally that is a readable type treatment. Here we have the same green background, but not so readable. The bold here, the thin typeface here, notice that it's set in gray, very difficult to read. And this one is horrible. Not only is it all caps and bold, it's a condensed typeface that is practically completely illegible. So we want to avoid the decorative fonts treatment on paragraphs. And here's another example. A really cool looking digital font, very modern, but not in this treatment. Really tough to read. Okay? Now here's an interesting example. This is a very small point size, and it's kind of hard to read on the left, but the same size type is a lot easier to read on the right because of the leading. The leading has been probably tripled in depth, and it's really still quite small, but you'd agree, I think, that it would be a lot easier to read this on the right. So if you ever have to use small point size on your text, make the leading as deep as possible for ease of reading. Next, we have an example of how text that's overly large is really tough to read, as you can quickly see. It's tiring. Here are some great examples of what not to do. Gray text on a light green background, really tough. And then my personal favorite, the busy background. You can't read that text at all. It is just impossible. Here's one solution, and that is to take the same background and ghost it back, make it a lot lighter, and then the text is much more contrasty on top of that. Lastly, I went over these in another video, but we'll repeat them here again. This is the same paragraph set in different alignments. This is flush left, and this is justified. Each of these two top ones are really quite readable and work quite well in layouts. If you work with the word spacing on the justified so you don't get the holes in the text, you can be quite successful with these two settings. Flush right, which is here, and centered don't work as well for body copy. The rags are just too distracting. So you want to avoid those two settings for long passages. This is something to be aware of if you use text wrap here, where you wrap text around a graphic. You should really use a justified type alignment when you're wrapping text around something, because you'll get a straight line on the edges and you'll get a much cleaner line around your text wrap, around your graphic, if you use justified. This is flush left, rag right, and so you get a super raggedy left side there. Okay. This is a border text treatment. Be careful with how you use these because they can be hard to read, but if you ever do use it, I recommend an all caps version so the letters are all the same size. Makes for a better border. Lastly, we have a nice treatment here, a block of text on its side. This can work really well if you use justified alignment, get rid of any gaps in the word spacing, and you use good contrast and a nice readable typeface. And then at the end here, we have some not so readable because it's gray on green. The black reads a lot better over the green background. I'm going to finish here with a fun example of something that a student sent me a couple years ago. I have never been able to figure out what this says. I think it's probably a logo for a band, a death metal band, and it's a case where the letters have been overly treated, and it's just absolutely impossible to read. So do show some restraint when working with logo text, and keep these readability tips in mind as you proceed. Thanks.
All right. So what are some things that stuck out to you? What are some rules that you learned about legibility and readability? Did anything stand out to you? Letting and kerning, to use justify with wrap text. Excellent. Those are good. We're listening. That's wonderful. Good. So yeah, so let's go over some interesting things. So how we read, okay? Reading in the eyes. It's good to know how a person reads so that you know how to design around things to make them more legible. The saccadic movement is just a series of jerky movements followed by a fixed pause, okay? Now the example here is if you read a group of words in one eye span and then you pause and kind of shift the eyes to another group of words. Regression, it's a process of rereading material to find keywords that were previously there. This is often thought to aid people with short-term memory, and it also helps make continuous connections with the material. I find myself in regression constantly because I don't process things as quick, so I'm always rereading something. If I read a paragraph of something, I go back and read because I don't remember I don't process it very well. So definitely one of those people that falls into that category. Now, factors for determining readability. What are some things that you learned in the video? What are some things that can hinder or help readability? Should use some examples. All cap can hinder. Yep, all caps can be hard if it's in, all caps is great if it's a headline, maybe one or two words. But when you start getting into paragraphs, it's very hard to read. So we don't use all caps for paragraph text or large bodies of text. Excellent. Anything else? Wide text, right, Kia? So the wider the text, the harder it is to read. And we learned that in that video that we just, the quiz we just took. And then text on a busy background. That's right. We don't want to put anything on anything that competes with it for attention. So if your background is really busy or it's going to compete with the text, then we don't want that. We want to avoid it. Super large text in paragraphs, that's definitely hard to read. Though that background is pretty fun. Yeah, exactly. So we also see horizontal flow created by white space between lines. It's important. Type size to line or column width is important. Readers don't read individual letters. They read words and group of words based on the way they associated it in the past, maybe with a word or a shape they know well. So that's also something important to think about. Youth versus adults. We read differently. Readability versus readability. Now, young readers, I'm teaching my little girl how to read now, and we're sounding out each individual letter to make a word. But as an adult, we kind of have that memorized. So we read the group of letters instead of the individual letters. And that's just how we've been conditioned. Okay, so let's jump into the rules here and pull up my slides. Okay, so see if I can get this to fit. Give me 1 second. All right, so we're on rule number 1. So remember, okay, for optimum legibility, meaning to make something more readable, you want to choose classic, time-tested typefaces. Some of the classics are the ones that you're actually required to work with in the class, like Times New Roman. And what are some other ones? Helvetica. These typefaces should be drawn and crafted with consistency. among characters. Some examples are Baskerville, Futura, what's another one? Universe, Palatino, Memphis, that's another one. And when you're working with these typefaces, they're great because they're time tested, meaning they're classic. They've worked. People love them. They're universal. They work with a whole broad spectrum of things in design. But it's very bad. It's a very bad thing to stretch or squish text. So if you ever did that in your invitation or for your logo, you might have seen me comment, stretching and squishing is bad. So we don't ever want to stretch or skew the text in any way. We want to preserve it. Now, in some designers can do this very effectively, and they do it correctly because they're able to break the rule stylistically. However, when we're first learning, it's a good rule of thumb to kind of keep your text proportionate. And I'll show you an example of some of these in just a minute. Now, for the other one, we want to jump to this one about upper and lowercase. You heard the video talk about it's hard to read large bodies of text with uppercase. Now, text set all capital letters severely. Okay, so with text or large bodies of text with all capital letters, it really severely retards reading. Use upper and lowercase letters for optimum readability. Your ascenders and your descenders, those are the top and the bottom lines of your actual type or your text, your letters. This provides the necessary visual cues that make text more readable, right? So text set entirely in uppercase letters kind of form these rectangle shapes, and there are times where you can use this to your advantage. So switching cases, an example of all caps uses and lowercase uses can sometimes help. Let me show you an example. Let me share my screen and see if I can pull up my Illustrator here. I'll share screen. So I've got my Illustrator up, and usually, so in your assignment 3, I think it's assessment 3, you're going to be asked to format the article that you wrote up about your font. So in this case, let's see, Times New Roman, and then I'm going to use the font Times New Roman. I'll make the font big. This is effective because it's only a few words, 2 or 3 words. That's my headline. All right. But if I was to have a body of text and I used all caps, then that's when it gets tricky. So let me see if it'll let me fill. It probably won't. So let me just grab some text here and I'll throw it in. The reason why it's hard to read is because it is usually, large bodies of text are usually much smaller. Ooh, probably not that small. I'll go like that, and then we'll make this uppercase. So it makes it much harder to read, especially if it was even smaller, which is that's about 10 point, which is about average for your font size. So even if it was in paragraphs, it just makes it really hard to read, especially if you had large bodies of text. Too hard. That's overwhelming. So that's kind of what the rule's saying. When you're laying out large bodies of text, or even with your invitation, you definitely want lowercase. This is just easier to read. Okay? All right. So are there any questions about this specifically? Yeah, socially not acceptable. Yeah, I mean, it's just common sense. So that's one of the rules that it's good to know. All right, good. So I just wanted to demonstrate that for just a minute. Let's go back to the slides right here. All right, let's move on. So here's an example, upper and lowercase. It's just reading a sentence set with lowercase letters is just easier, as you can see in this top line, even when it's halfway cut off, than it is set with only all caps, because the shapes are just more varied and distinguishable with lowercase. Also, a variation in the shape of a block. This keeps the eye from tiring. So when things are all caps, it's just really hard to read. All right, rule number 5 here. So for text type, use sizes that are according to legibility. So the sizes, this is also in your quiz. Remember the range from 8 to 12 points for text that's read from your hand. And then be sure to remember that point size is based on the X height of letters. This appears different from one typeface to another. So a 12-point Times New Roman will be different than a 12-point Helvetica font. So just kind of use the 8 to 12 gauge as is a good rule of thumb when you're using any body of text at all. And then you're definitely going to want to use text types of book. Regular is what they mean, regular or Roman. You don't want to use bold or heavy, especially in paragraph form. You want to definitely avoid typefaces appearing too heavy or too light. Even if it's too thin, it makes it even harder to read, and it doesn't print very well. That's another reason why. Text typefaces that are too light can't easily be distinguished from the background, so then it's even harder and doesn't print well as in addition to that. So just remember that usually makes them less legible if they're too heavy or too light. And then for text type, you want to be consistent. You want to use a consistent letter and word spacing to produce even, uninterrupted texture and color. Remember, she did that example of that angled box of text, and she says once you've gone in and adjusted the spacing and used the correct alignment, then it becomes uninterrupted texture, and that is more effective. So letters should flow gracefully and naturally into words, and words into lines. And so be careful with the alignment that you choose. This can either abruptly disrupt it, or it can help increase spacing and help guide the eye as you read. Okay, rule 11, we're here, and this one is just even spacing will make connections unclear. So adjust your subheadings to have a closer proximity. You just want to make sure that everything is proportionate. So you want to use paragraph style settings to make adjustments and keep things consistent. And I'll show you how to do that. Let's stop the share. Well, I'll show you for our demo, actually. It might be easier. I'll do that real quick for our demo. So what I want you to do is try to strive for consistency. The purpose of effective rags is not only to achieve aesthetic beauty, but to kind of help readers move gently and effortlessly down a column of text. So with you're laying out your paper, you're going to be designing and formatting this. Effective rags consists of lines establishing an informal but consistent pattern of line endings. And let me show you. You can adjust this through tracking and hyphenation. Let me pull up InDesign real quick, see if it'll let me format this for you. Just open up a document real quick. Give me 1 second. So I want you to, is your InDesign open, guys? What I want you to do is get InDesign open. Always good. That's what I like to hear, Kia. It's always open. Have it pulled up real quick. We're going to do an exercise together, and we're going to share our screen. So we're going to apply these rules a little bit. So first one is we're going to practice applying a paragraph style. So in InDesign, it's really cool. You can just flow in some random type, or you can use type from your article, whatever you want to do. If you go to type, fill with placeholder text, click that, and then it will fill your box up with just a bunch of Latin random words. And this is nice for our exercise. So part of the demo that I want to show you is when you have a large body of text, you definitely want to make sure it's defaulted to lowercase. And when you highlight something, you want to make sure that the font is between 8 and 12 point. So as you're setting up your columns, you want to make sure your columns are the same width, okay? Now the way to check that is if you select your text box, and go ahead and practice this with me because I'm going to ask you to show me how to check the width of your text box. First thing you want to do is once you have your text in here is to go to your hyphenate button and deselect it. Okay, where's your hyphenate button? Well, it's also under your character formatting controls right up at the top, or you could go to Window, Let's see, styles, character. Let's see, let's go to window, styles, and oh, type in tables, character. And then under character, see if it'll give it to me. Might be under paragraph. I apologize. Hold on. It's muscle memory at this point. Paragraph. There we go. You open your paragraph box. There's a hyphenate button right here. You select it or deselect it, and it will get rid of all of your hyphenated words. It will help you avoid widows and orphans. All right. So we're going to move the text box over, set up our column. And first thing I want you to do is format it to be lowercase, format it to be between 8 and 12 point, and then you're going to check the width of your text box. I usually like to use this purple line, purple and pink line. This is my margin line to help keep my text boxes within this line. This helps me keep anything from going over the page. And then what I'll do is if you see this plus sign here at the bottom, that usually means there's text that is not being seen. So I'll click and drag just to get it out there. Now, if I click on one text box and I go up here to the top, my X and Y coordinates, that is how wide or high my text box is. There's also a W and an H here at the top of my screen. And if you can't see that, I'll go ahead and pull it up real quick for you. Let me share my desktop. I think that might be easier for you to actually see what I'm doing. There we go. So with that said, can you see my width and height up here? Okay, good. So you'll want to make sure that the columns are, or the text boxes are the same width. And this will help us to avoid any rags that are uneven. So width is 17p, I mean this is in picas. So I'll copy this and make sure that I get the same width on my other box. I'll go over here, height, I'll copy that and go over to my other box, paste it to make sure it's the same width. So everything is the same height and width now. Now if I select them both, I can adjust them both, and this will allow me to be able to end the columns at the same line. Did you see how I did that? Whereas before, look at all this space. If this was my column, or if these were my columns, let me grab my pencil tool and show you. Look at all this white space being unused. We don't want that. And look where it ends. This is where it ends, but all this text on the left still keeps going. So what we need to do is end the columns at the same point. So I'm going to hold down Shift and select them both. And then I'll grab this anchor point here at the bottom, and I'll just slowly go up as I click and drag this anchor point. And I'm going up as it's starting to adjust, and I'm going to try to get to a point where it will end at the same line, right there. So now everything is even. It begins and ends at the same, or it ends at the same point. So now these are ready to format. All right. Now, what I want you to do is take a few minutes to figure out how to get your columns, your text boxes the same size, and then I want you to try to get the text that you flowed into there end at the same point. All right. Now, I will stop the screen share. Just let me know. I'll give you a few minutes to practice this. Does everybody know how to flow in text? You can just draw a text box, go to Type, Fill with Placeholder Text, and click that, and it will fill it. And then so just give it an 8 to 12 point font. Mine's 12 right now, so that's easy to see for you guys. And then you'll want to make sure that your text boxes are the same width, same height. I guess the width is more important than the height because you'll be adjusting that later. Yeah, no problem. So right up here, if I select a text box, you see this with my arrow, the width and height. This is the area that you're going to want to focus on. The width and height. Did you see that, Breezy? Right here. So what you'll do is just kind of, you can't see the top of my screen. Oh, I thought let's see, let's try this again. Desktop, oh, Here we go. I apologize. Okay, so right here, select it again, go to width and height right here. You see that? So you just want to select your first text box and then kind of, you can either write it down, write down the values, or you can copy and paste them once your other text box is selected. Okay, good. So sorry about that. I have to share my whole desktop for you to see all of InDesign, apparently. So thank you for letting me know. I'll close out some of these. And if you've already got two columns laid out and they're the same size and they end at the same point, go ahead and let me know and I'll have you share your screen and you can show me that you have it. So the point is just to practice getting them laid out. Now, here's another thing is you could highlight them both and then grab one of the anchor points and now you can resize them and they'll both extend evenly. I can adjust the width or height of these as long as they're both selected. And I only have to click one and use one anchor point. There we go. So that's what's neat. So as long as you have them both selected, you can adjust them by clicking and dragging an anchor point on the top, bottom, left, or right, and it will adjust both of them evenly. So you don't have to keep changing the width of each one. But it is always good habit to make sure they're both the same width because we want even columns for our layout. All right, does any brave soul want to share their screen? Yeah, Norma, good question. So once you have your text box drawn, if you go to type, fill with placeholder text right here. Your drop-down menu under the type button. Did you see that, Norma? Did you find it? Okay, would anyone like to demonstrate this? Show us how they did it? We are in InDesign. Right now we're in InDesign. Good question. All right, Breezy. So I'll stop my screen share. Go ahead and click screen share if you can. Just kind of point to your text boxes. Click so we can see the values. There we go. So yeah, so she's got them the same width, same height, and then she selects them both, and she's able to adjust them. And the idea here is to get them to adjust at the same, or line up at the same point. Excellent, good job. And if you need to, you can always widen them to get them to fit as well. Good job. Excellent. Anybody else want to show, demonstrate? Thank you, Breezy. Excellent job. Good job. So yes, that's the idea there. All right, so if nobody else wants to share, we'll go ahead and stop the share and we'll go back into our PowerPoints and we'll come back and do another little demo real quick. So we're now on this one which talks about clearly indicating paragraphs. Be careful not to use or upset the integrity and visual consistency of the text. Okay, I'll show you how to do this one because this one's very important. The two most common ways of indicating paragraphs are indenting or inserting additional space between paragraphs. Never both, okay? We don't do both. Only choose one type of indication to keep the text flowing. So limit drop or enlarge caps at the beginning of the paragraph only. Now, that was a mouthful, but let me show you what I mean. So now we've got our columns of text and they're all ready, they look beautiful. Now I've got to distinguish between where my paragraph breaks are. So this is your paper that you're formatting, pretend. Now you can either choose to put a hard return between the paragraphs. This is one way of indicating a paragraph break. This is one way of telling the reader, hey, there's a new paragraph, so it all doesn't flow into each other. Or the other option is to indent the first line of the next paragraph. And the way that you do that is you can go up here, and this is your, this is your first line indent, and you can just increase the value as much as you want. But you want the value to remain even. So I'm going to do, just for sake of ease, a 1 pica indentation on all of my new paragraphs. And I'll just enter in the value 1, hit tab, hit the value 1, oops, hit tab. So now I have evenly spaced paragraph indentations, but notice I didn't give a hard return. It's either or in this case. So we're either doing one or the other. So I want you to practice this too. I want you to practice either indenting yours or giving a hard return on your paragraph breaks. This is telling the reader where the next paragraph will be. So I want you to take a minute and try to apply this. So again, it's right here. If you hover over this icon under your paragraph formatting controls, you can give indentations. And here's your box. If you want your toolbox, just go to Window, type in Tables, click on Paragraph. That's how you pull up the box, but you can also do it from the top of your screen if you have your paragraph formatting controls up. And you just want to indent the first line. You don't want to indent the entire paragraph. So the first line left indent is what you're looking for. And I usually pick an easy number like 1 or 2. You don't want anything too far out there. You don't want it in the middle of the column. You just want a slight indent. And it has to be enough to kind of tell, I mean, if it's too subtle, then it just looks like a few letters are off. It's access, I guess. So you want to make sure it's done on purpose. So once you have that, go ahead and let me know, and we'll have you share your screen so you can kind of show us how you did it. So either the indent or the hard return, but never both at the same time. So once you have this already set up, there's something called a paragraph style, and that's pretty handy too. So let's see if we can go to our styles under your window drop-down menu, click on styles, and click on paragraph styles. This is helpful if you're laying out a magazine or a book or any document that requires you to set up large bodies of text. Even for your article, this might be handy to use. What you'll do is create a new paragraph style by clicking this little dog-eared page here at the bottom right. It's if you hover over it, it says Create New Style. And what you do with this is if you double-click it, it will open up your paragraph style, this new style that you're creating, and you can give it a title. I usually like to title this a new paragraph, or it can say paragraph indentation, indent paragraph, or it can be body text, whatever is easy for you to remember. And then in here, it will allow you to make your settings. So I want everything to stay 12-point font. Indents and spacing, my left indent will be 1, and that's all I need. Paragraph rules, I mean, you can pretty much use whatever, but once it's set up, now all I have to do is click on a body of text and, oh, let me go in and edit. I think I clicked on the wrong one. Indents and spacing. Oh, there we go. I just want the first line indent. There we go. So now I can go, yeah, see that, how it automatically did that for me? So that's pretty handy to use. So that's where the paragraph styles come up, because no matter what other text I'm going to add, I can just click on that body text and it's already set up for me. So it's really, really helpful. Okay, does anyone want to show me their paragraphs? Have you indented them? Have you done a hard return on them? Who would like to show me? Any brave soul? Are there any questions? Are you guys getting stuck on the indents? Thanks, Kia, for coming. Just catch the rest of the recording. We'll see you later. Okay, Breezy, let's have you share. Perfect. So you've chosen to do the indentation. Excellent job. Now, I would say that's probably maybe do half that indentation when you're setting up your real paragraph, just because it's maybe a little too much, but excellent job on being able to identify the paragraphs, because it does make me, the reader, easier to follow where your paragraphs are, because they're so distinguished. So I love that. And then I love how you already set up a basic paragraph style for your drop cap. That's next. You're even ahead of the game. So I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. All right, so that's how we'll basically set up our paragraph. Next rule, always align letters and words on the baseline. Again, we want to make sure that the last line of each sentence lines up, and that there is no, everything is just kind of on the perfect baseline. Text on a path should be used with a skill. Purpose, again, that's what we learned in the video. If you're going to text on a path, like she drew was it a hexagon or an octagon? She had that text wrap around that shape. That's if you're going to do it on purpose. She said she recommends doing all caps, so it's easier to read in that case. Here's some other common problems you might fall into if you're trying to format your article. Bolded body text, too heavy, stay away from it. Remember, stick with the regular or the Roman, whatever font you're using. If they have a regular version of that, use that. All caps, too hard to read, so stay away from it. Scripted fonts, any fancy fonts, stay away. Don't be tempted. Vertically stacked text, anything that's kind of stacked on top of each other, that makes it really hard to read as well. And then body text should never be over, 12 point. Remember, 8 to 12 point is kind of that happy place for our text, for the body text especially. And Breezy has a question. I only hit tab once and it made it that big. How do you change it? Okay, excellent question, Breezy. So I'll show you. Instead of hitting tab, we're not going to hit tab. We're going to adjust the left indent, the first line left indent. So do you see where my mouse is pointing? Right up here on your character formatting controls. Oh, let me share. Hold on. I'm not on the right one. Desktop. There we go. So right here under your paragraph formatting controls, it's this icon here, first line left indent, right here, and you'll want to set it to 1, and that will give you a really nice indent on your paragraph. So if I click on 1, it'll adjust that and give me a really good even spacing. Does that help? Yeah, and not to be confused with tabbing it over, you want to use the first line indent. This is a way to keep things evenly and consistent, and you want it to look like it was done on purpose. Yeah, absolutely. Good question. So yeah, that's where you find that one. And then too many effects, if you use blur, shading, blends, drop shadows, stay away from drop shadows. There's no need to apply that to this assignment. Drop shadows should rarely be used, and then used tastefully. Sometimes people can go overkill on them, and you never use them on body text. So if you're trying to read large bodies of text and use a drop shadow, that's a big no-no. It's really hard to read. And I can show you what I mean in just a minute. Similar problems continue. First line indent is sometimes too large. We want to stay away from that. So like I showed you, I kind of stick to 1 pica. That's about standard in the industry, is kind of 1 pica indent. Inconsistent spacing after paragraphs. Again, we want to make sure that we either do a hard return and that the spacing is even for every paragraph. Text is too close to the edge or page of a box. Ooh, that's a good one. I want to show you that one. And then text that's too close to other items or text boxes, pictures, graphics. Text is unreadable or over the background. Now, we learned that one in the video, but let me show you what I mean here. Can you guys see my InDesign? So one of the rules it's saying is keep your text boxes from touching each other. So we don't want to see this, right? So with my pencil, let me get a color. Color is always more fun. Look how close my text is. It's practically touching, right? What I want to do is evenly space it. So I'm going to give even amount of space between it. What that means is that there's an even amount of space on the left side between my purple margin and there's enough space. It's even amount of space on the right side, and there's an even amount of space between my two text boxes. So that's what I'm going to be looking for. And we want to make sure that the same line of text goes straight across, that your text boxes end at the same line. I don't want to see uneven text boxes either. Something like this. This is pretty exaggerated, but even like this. Let me take off these little red markers and I'll show you what I'll be grading for, or grading on. Look at this. If I bring my ruler down, you'll notice this huge gap. This left box is not even, right? And if you'll notice, that kind of affects the way that my text lands at the bottom too. There's that gap. It doesn't land at the same place. So these are the things that I want you to look out for. So take that ruler guide and bring it down so you can make sure that everything is lined up correctly. Did you see that? So that'll be a huge thing you're going to be graded on this formatting. We want to make sure we steer clear of it. And let's move on to this next one. Okay, punctuation. I'm going to give a quick English lesson, but I'm not going to dwell on it because this isn't an English class. But just notice how the definition changes when you read this if there's no proper punctuation. Let's eat grandma or let's eat grandma. And so there's two different ways that you can interpret this if you forget your punctuation. So remember, keep that comma in its place and make sure you read things carefully as you're writing. All right, this is when your type knowledge is going to show or not. So we're going to use appropriate marks. I have a fun little website that I want you to play with along with me, okay? We'll play together, but I'll put this link in here so you can play with me. You're going to use appropriate marks, use glyphs when available, practice sensitive typography, language, specific characters, things like that. So we're going to switch gears here, and I'm going to go to this website, and you guys can follow along with me. It's actually a really fun website, so if you have time to kind of just play with it, I think we should. So we're talking about well-designed commas carry the essence of the typeface down to a very, all the way down to the details. Helvetica's comma is a chunky square. It's mounted on a curve, and you'll notice each font has a different kind of comma. You'll see these commas. The Italian restaurant has that little line. Ava's has that little upside down or kind of teardrop. Some have a little curly Q at the end of it. Apostrophes and quotation marks are sometimes called curly quotes. Here you can enjoy them. And so there's lots of different versions of these other markers, design typeface. Here we go. Other marks that you can get to know. And it's important to get to know the glyphs, and it's important to know the characters of your font, because in this next assignment we're going to have, you're going to be drawing a portrait. And we're going to need to rely heavily on these characters and these keystrokes. So just wanted to point that out to you real quick. That wasn't the website I wanted to share though. I think it's a little further up. Let me see if I can find it. Give me 1 second. There we go. Common problems. So if you'll follow along with me, we'll screen share this right here. This is what I wanted you to follow along with. I'll put the other link in your chat box. This is the one where it has interactive game. So the game is the crime, vertical or horizontal scaling, how to play. So then each one you click on is actually an actual game. So I'm going to unplug this. It's all about the sound. All right, so stretching letters distorts their overall proportions and internal line weight. So this crime is committed both inadvertently through careless use of software, but also in cold blood. So in order to force type to fill a given space, you're it's getting stretched, as you can see. Okay. Let's try this one. See if I can get this to refresh real quick. So the point is, don't stretch your type, okay? Let's do this one. So the quotation marks consist of distinct characters, so I want you to put that X over any of the quotations that you're not supposed to use. So you want to destroy the evil hatch marks. Those are what they call the dumb quotes, and you want to preserve the good quotation marks. So you're just trying to get rid of the hatch marks is what we call it. This is just a fun way of kind of showing you that you want to focus more on the typography. You don't want those hatch marks. You want good, strong quotes, especially when you're laying out a design. So kind of play around with that. Just move your mouse over the hatch marks and get rid of them. Oh, I'm not very good at this game, so we're not going to keep playing. But I want you to play this. There's a whole ton of little games that you can focus on. Let me try this one. This one's on pseudo-italics, italics that are counterfeit. They're not real. It's when people try to angle the font too far and they don't use the true italic form or italic typographic style. So the way that we do this one, see if it'll let me. There we go. So a true italic typeface is just a slanted version of a Roman font. The characters are specifically designed to provide traditional mode variation with a type family. So your idea here is to try to bounce. If it catches your font, you want to be able to shoot it back, because the idea is not to use pseudo-italics. You always want to use the italic font. So play around with that. Take a minute and kind of play around with those 3 games. I want you to enjoy this, but also get what they're trying to teach you. So use the arrow keys to position the cannon. You can use the space bar to fire back. Protect the letters from being distorted while defending your own cannon. So that's the idea there. So take a few minutes, and we're going to go ahead and go to our break. This is kind of a good stopping point, but enjoy the 3 games that are on here. They're really cute and they're fun, but hopefully they teach you to pay attention to typographical characters. This is important when you're laying things out. Are there any questions so far about what we've covered? All right, so if there's no questions, we'll go ahead and go straight to our 10-minute break. And then when we come back, we'll finish up the rules, and then we'll jump right into our self-portrait, or I guess not self-portrait, but our portrait design. We'll be an illustrator for the portrait design, so just make sure you have Illustrator pulled up, and we'll jump right into it. All right, guys, we'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, so let's finish up our PowerPoint slides real quick, just so we can get through this. We're almost toward the end. Then we're going to talk about our assignment 1. So we talked about punctuation, talked about the do's and don'ts. Okay, so now we're going to talk about using effects responsibly. The 3 deadly weapons of design. The first one that you want to avoid is stroked fonts, drop shadows, and gradients. And we're probably not going to have time to do a demo of these, but stroked fonts is very, well, I guess I could show you guys. I'll show you. Stroked fonts, it's too hard to read. It just looks like a 3rd grader did it. There's no real point to a stroked font unless you're doing it for a stylistic purpose. Drop shadows, gradients, so you want to avoid these things for now. And then here we go. So using effects responsibly. So have a purpose for the shadow. Is it even needed? Or be consistent with it when you're using it. Take the time to get it right. So you want to avoid these common mistakes. Too dark, too removed. You want to be able to have a good drop shadow. And let me show you how to do it effectively. So we'll stop the share. And you can do this with me. We'll go into InDesign again with our paper. Now, I'm not a fan of drop shadow, but I will show you how to use it responsibly. Highlight this, and I will give it a nice color. I don't like black and white. It's boring. Let's give it a nice, let's do this. That's too light. Let's do a blue or red. We'll do red. Here we go. And then I'll give it a bold so I can see it. See. Increase this. So here's the word drop shadow. What you're going to do is pull up your effects. You're going to go to Object. Here, let me share my desktop for you guys so you can see it all. So you'll go to Object, Effects, Drop Shadow. And what this does is we'll pull up a drop shadow dialog box. Now the default drop shadow, terrible, awful. It's impossible to read. It looks awful. So you're going to need to go in and manually adjust it. First thing you want to adjust is the opacity of your drop shadow. And I like to start at 45 or even less. So maybe a 25, it's a nice drop shadow. You could even do 30, and I think that would be just fine. And then here you can change the angle of your drop shadow. Do you see how I'm changing the angle by rotating it? You can kind of pick a good angle for it. Where do you want the shadow to end? Do you want it to be on the left or the right side? And once you have a good drop shadow angle point, you can adjust the size. You can make it smaller or you can make it larger. The distance, you can kind of bring it in a little bit, and the more you bring it in, the better off it is. And then the size, you can kind of play around with that. So that's more of an appropriate drop shadow. So you might need to go in and play with it because the default drop shadow is very dark and it's very disconnected. And so that's an appropriate way to use it. However, you don't even really need it. And I kind of encourage you to avoid it because especially on large bodies of text, if you were to add a drop shadow, I'm going to show you how hard it is to read. There's the drop shadow, and look at that. It just really is hard on the eyes. Even if you were to rotate it, it's like text on text. It's just too much. So so I say avoid drop shadow when you can. All right. Go back here. Gradients, again, you want to take the time to get it right. 3 colors max, but you want to keep them close on the color wheel. So if you're using a navy blue, you want to use maybe a lighter navy blue, but you don't want to do the rainbow in your gradient. And very rarely is gradient used. If you're going to use it, you need to have a purpose. But again, the stroked fonts, I kind of say don't use them. If you're going to use them responsibly. But in our designs for this class, we won't be using stroked fonts. And in fact, I'm going to kind of encourage you not to. And then text effects, how to distort, type on a path, only to be used with skill and wisdom. So I'll show you real briefly. I don't have a video demo here for you, but I will show you how to warp text. So first thing you can do is type on a path where you'll grab a shape. or you can grab your line tool. So in this case, I'll do a circle. And then I'm going to hold down on my type tool, and there's a hidden tool called Type on a Path. I'll select where I want my circle to start. And then here is where I type on a path. And then once you're done, you can adjust these little bars. This will help you distinguish where you want to stop, where you want to start. But this is Type on a Path. Very rarely do we use this. You can also take off your stroke on your shape, and then it looks like you just were typing in a circle. That. So this is Type on a Path, drop shadow. We'll go back here. Are there any questions about these effects that you want to know how to do, or that you didn't see done, you'd want demonstrated? Let's take a look. Okay, nope. Okay, good. Then we'll just keep moving. All right, so designer responsibility. What can happen if you don't pay attention to detail? Well, let's see what happened to even the best of us designers when they made mistakes. Look at this. Look at the spelling. Does anything stand out to you? Did they use spell check? This is a billboard. Can you see it? Spell check probably would not catch that, but you as the designer are responsible. Yeah, public. It should say public. You're right. Spell check wouldn't have caught that. That's why it's important that you also have to read. Designers are supposed to be editors in that sense as well. What about this one? We talked about punctuation earlier with that comma. What are they missing here? It's the punctuation, packed with tasteless sugar. It reads as one sentence. It doesn't break it up. They should use that comma and that period to be able to break up that sentence. Is it packed with taste and then less sugar, or is it packed with tasteless sugar? It doesn't really make sense when you read it. So that's another design flaw there. Okay, what about this one? We're talked about spacing, kerning, leading. Looks like this logo needed some of that. Yeah, it's a little sad. They needed space. So spacing can be your friend. Okay, this one's a little hard to see, but we're looking for consistency. This one doesn't always follow consistency, and so it looks kind of weird. Over here at the top left, Harry Potter, it has the name of the DVD, but then all the others following it kind of have the ones going down the center. Some aren't even perfectly aligned. So it looks like their alignment is a little off, which is kind of sad. Yeah, all the titles are different. They're not aligned properly. There's some pictures that are lower than others. It doesn't look like they followed a good template here. So we want to be consistent. We don't want our text boxes to look like that, where one's taller than the other or one's higher than the other. We want everything to line up perfectly. As designers, we kind of have to be OCD about this. Okay, what do you notice about this? Does this make sense? This is also a spell check issue, except yes, spell check probably wouldn't have caught it, but a designer spell check issue. Yeah, they're not consistent. Fourth floor. Is there a third floor? Firth is a word, okay. What about Seth? I wouldn't even know how to say second floor, third floor. Yeah, Firth is a word. Spell check might have caught that one. But anyways, this is important to not get caught up and got to be able to pay attention to what we're actually designing. Because as a designer, they should have totally caught that. Okay, what about this one? We talked about avoiding stacking things vertically. This doesn't make sense. Information And department. I don't understand why department's going under the N. So it's missing a T, right? So again, we want to make sure it's all making sense in the end. Once we've designed something, I need to step back and look at it and be like, and maybe get someone else to look at it and see if they get it. Yeah, exactly. Okay, positioning. Okay, where's her head positioned? This is the Where magazine. This also looks like poor placement. This one wasn't thought through. Love this one. So Where magazine, well, it doesn't look like an E, does it? It looks like an O, and because her head is there, it's covering up what that letter is. So we just don't, yeah, we just don't see it. I don't think the model likes this one, yeah. Okay, here's another one that's kind of gone wrong. It was a designer that had kind of a good idea. What if we make a G out of that grapefruit, but instead of using the actual letter in your typography or your type family, they used a piece of fruit, but this doesn't really translate. This is a good idea gone wrong. See that one? Anyways, there's lots of different mistakes that can be made, and so it's up to us to pay attention. So our attention to detail, our eye for detail needs to be on point. Yep, it does not look like a G, so it was a very bad idea. All right, so we're talking about text illustrations. I want to share with you some examples. We're going to be creating a portrait. It could be a self-portrait. It could be a portrait of something that you've seen online. You can kind of copy a style, but I want you to do your best and come up with something creative. And believe me, I've been teaching this class for a couple of months now, and I haven't seen one look-alike. They all just come out so different, and they're so unique. But it's really cool what can be done with typography. This one is awesome. They not only can create dimension, but you can create so many things. And you're not just stuck with portraits. I mean, look at this church. Typography is art. It's beautiful, and if it's used appropriately and used correctly, you can create some pretty amazing stuff. So styles and sizes were used to create texture and value in this artwork. You might see some typographic illustrations that look like this, and a lot of these effects are used in Photoshop, so you're not going to be able to get it exactly right, but the one on the right could easily be done in Illustrator. It's just a matter of positioning, and what I like about this, they use more of the curvy, rounded letters, like the C's and the S's and the G's and the D's, E's, lowercase letters were used to create the curly hair, so I really like that. And then the earring, the C was brilliant. So this is just an example of what we're going to be looking for. And again, this is all typography. Something like this is often done in Photoshop, though. There's a way to get this effect that will help you save a lot of time. But what I'm mostly going to be looking for is something like this. And I even have another PDF, kind of an example I want to show you, student examples. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick and see if it'll let me share. Here we go. So here's some student examples that have been submitted in the past. These have been kind of cool to see. You can see this one clearly looks like the Queen of Hearts. That was done with Helvetica. Here's a more simple approach. This was done with Futura, but again, I like it. This is Bodini. She uses the font in her name, which is kind of cool. I like the use of the threes to create the curvy, curly hair. Futura, again, so this is another interpretation of a more narrow, gets italicized Futura. This one is Dido. Love this one. Good use of the G. Universe font. This one's really clever. Love the pierced ears, the thick hair. So again, they're doing different styles, different weights to create the face. This one's Helvetica. Again, we're using Futura, curly hair. So just by using different characters, different letters and numbers, you can get a completely different look. This is Dido. And then Adobe Caslon. Well, it's cool. I love the braces. This one was really clever. And they used BOY to create the glasses. Remember we used to draw that to create the boy, the word boy, and then draw the face. That was kind of cool. Baskerville. Adobe Caslon. I had to look closely to see this one, but I finally could see it. This one's a very simple interpretation, but still, it's effective. Again, Futura, these are a little bit more simpler. There's some of these are more complicated. Queen Caslon is one of those. I love that thick S that drapes across. That's really cool. Anyway, so here's just some examples. I do recommend you doing it with the white background though, not the black background. It's too hard on the eyes. But here are some examples that I want you to kind of pull from. Hopefully this gives you an example of what I'm looking for. Are there any questions about the portrait? I'll do a quick demo on it and then I'll kind of set you guys free. But I wanted to see if there were any questions that you would have. Now the grading rubric has been posted. So if you have questions on what you're going to be graded on, it will be there. So how do you do it? Good question. Okay, so let's jump into that. Let's get into Illustrator. Get to the fun part of class. We're going to go to Adobe Illustrator. I'm going to kind of get rid of all this. Now, there is a really cool website that I wanted to share with you. Let's see if I can pull it up before we get into it. It's the Star Wars Typographic Illustrations. They just kind of launched these, and it's kind of going viral online. So I don't know if you've seen these before, but they're just posters, typographic posters that were created simply out of different font families. Now, at the bottom of these, you'll notice that Helvetica, Times New Roman, a bunch of different fonts were used to create this effect, so not just one font family, whereas you're going to be required to use the font family that you wrote your paper on. So we won't be able to get quite the same effect, but I'm going to do one with the same font family, and I think it gives me good enough, kind of gets me close enough. So the typographer was Matteo Savacci, and from H57 Advertising Agency, and they created these interesting Star Wars drawings only with type. So this series of illustrations has been named May the Force of Typography Be With You. And so that's kind of what my hope is we start this assignment. So I'm going to do Yoda for us, kind of show you how to do it. And really, to answer your question, was it breezy? You're just going to have to start by putting something on the page. Now, there's no right or wrong way to do this. I'll pull this in because I'm going to want to look at it as I'm doing it. Way you can do it is you can change the opacity on it so it's really light, and you can kind of place it. If you're going to do that, though, I suggest you open up your Layers panel. So you go to Window, go to Layers, right here. And that will open your Layers dialog box. This will allow you to, I'm going to start 2 layers. This one will be my example. And with it selected, I'm going to, paste it in there. And Sandy did yours. So Sandy, do you want to share yours real quick before I jump into the tutorial? So once my example is placed, you can either choose to trace something or completely construct your own. Since I'm going to be tracing it, I want to be able to adjust the opacity on this. All right, so the font I'm going to use is going to be Helvetica. So first thing I'm going to do is start with the, sorry, not the apostrophes, but the, what are they called? The parentheses. So I'm going to draw my parentheses. I'm going to increase the size so you can see them. And then what I'm going to do is go to Type, Create Outlines. And then I'm going to right click and go ungroup, because when you create outlines, they're grouped. And this will allow me to kind of rotate. Now, all your tools should be similar to the InDesign tools. You'll need to figure out rotate and some other things. I'm going to make this a little thinner. Going to rotate this until I get it just the right angle. And once I have one designed, maybe take you a little bit to get the effect you're going for. I'm just going to copy and paste it because it's already the width and length that I need it to be. I'm just going to kind of rotate it until I get it placed. So that's that one. Okay, next I'm going to need to grab my brackets. And these ones are a little thicker, so we'll do bold. And I'm using Times New Roman for this. I'm going to go to Type, Create Outlines, right-click, Ungroup. And I'm going to kind of angle them the best I can. I'm going to get the length right, the width right. I'll copy and paste. Remember, copy and paste is going to be your friend. That's Control-C, Control-V if you're on a PC, and Command-C, Command-V if you're on a Mac. You can even stand to make these a little larger. Okay, and he's starting to come together pretty well. I'm going to do another parenthesis. Oops, not a bracket. And I'll go to Type. What's next? Type. After I go to Type, where do I go? What's the next step? Create outlines. That's right. Create outlines. And in this case, I don't need to ungroup because I just did one. These are going to be the eyebrows. So you can kind of see I'm kind of tracing, and you could pull up any picture. You could pull up just an image of someone, or I had one student who wanted to do themselves. So they pulled up their own picture and they kind of traced it with the typography. So it's really up to you, but it's starting to come together already. And I like that. And then I'm just going to use these same parentheses for the eyes, but they're going to be much smaller. And I'm just going to position them right where they need to be. All right, and then I'm looking for an O. So there's my O. Go to Type, Create Outlines. So once you type something or type a letter or a character, you can go straight to your, I'm going to zoom in here so you can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to resize this. Now, how do you proportionately resize an object? An O for the eye. That's right, you hold down Shift. That will allow you to resize your object proportionately. Exactly. If you want to copy something over, hold down Alt-Option, click and drag. You'll see that arrow. My mouse turns into a black and white mouse. That means it's about to make a copy of something. That's one way to copy an object. Or you can do Control-C, Control-V, Command-C, Command-V to paste. So the O is for the eye. And then next, I will need another one of these parentheses. So I'm going to copy and paste. This one's going to be for the cheekbones. And I need it to be thinner, so I'm going to kind of squish it a little bit. This one's going to get stretched. So I guess we're breaking the rule, right? The no skewing or stretching your text. But in this case, it's more art than it is layout and design. So you get to break all the rules in this one, and you'll have to follow all the rules for your assessment 3, where you format your article. Now the article has already been written for you, so you'll need to just, all you need to do is do the formatting, okay? You don't need to write another article. All right, now this one will get a little tricky because the nose is a sans serif font. And I'm using a serif font, which is Times New Roman, but I'm going to use a regular and create outlines, and I'm going to rotate it. Try to get it as close to that shape as possible. All right, and then a line, or you can use your line tool. And then I'm going to give it a stroke of about 4. The direction for the article, yes, it's 8.5 by 11. Thank you for asking, Breezy. It should be on there. If they don't have it on there, just default to an 8.5 by 11. So that's what we were working on in InDesign. You'll just do an 8.5 by 11, and 1 to 2 pages should be enough. I just want to see that you can format it correctly. And you can Google, too, for inspiration, magazine article or newspaper article to kind of see the elements that you'll need. Excellent. All right, so as I'm going through this, I'm going to do the last chin, and then we'll have him designed. Okay, and this chin is a little bit wider than I want it to be, so I'm going to kind of grab these little anchor points. And there we go. So there is Yoda. Now I can delete my background, my example, and I'm left with him. So now I've got my typographic portrait right here. So this is kind of an easy way to do if you want to trace something. I also recommend you try drawing yourself or kind of using a picture to get the effect and see what you come up with, a simple face. So I want you to play along with this for a little bit. Are there any questions about this, how you get a certain effect? It's just about placement. So if you can get your characters to place correctly, use your rotate tool, practice that. Practice rotating things from angle to angle. Squishing and squeezing and skewing will allow you to get that effect too. All right, this is pretty straightforward. So we're going to jump into our assessment real quick. And I'll share I want to go to Google real quick because that brought up a question. So I'm going to Google this, show you what I'm looking for. Newspaper article layout. And kind of look, this is a little bit more complicated, but even this layout, so you've kind of got your large headline and then your columns of text is what I'm looking for. You kind of have a sub-headline. So this is kind of going to be my guide. And you can even see that here, how something's laid out. How you have, you're not going to be using a picture, but in this case, you will have, whoops. Let's go back. Let's view that image, see if it'll take us. There we go. So I'm going to pull that into my InDesign real quick, and we'll use that as an example. Oh well, we'll just look at it. All right, so I'm going to stop the share. We're going to go back into InDesign. Now we kind of practice formatting columns of text, so the hard part's over. Now we're going to be focusing on how to lay out our headlines. So in this case, if I did my paper on Times New Roman, whatever headline you gave your paper, you're going to want to title it something clever. I get this text formatted just right. And use your rulers and guides. I'm going to use my purple margin lines to kind of guide where I place my text box. If you'll notice, my headline is never over that purple margin line, and that's a good thing because I'm keeping everything lined up, even my text, my body text. Everything's going to be lined up correctly from end to end, and I have a nice amount of space between my columns. So there's my headline. Now I'm going to need a sub-headline. And I'll just grab a line of text right here. This will be my sub-headline in Times New Roman. I'll use the regular version I'll increase the font. So again, we're using hierarchical elements. So my largest portion of my design is on the top. The smallest is on it gets smaller as it goes down. So now my sub-headline is not as large as my headline. You can even choose to format it a little bit. You can use italics. Sure. Yeah, you can. That's a good question, Breezy. I think for contrast, I think it's essential. I'm not a fan of using the same font for the design. So in the case of the portrait, same font for all the characters, but in the case of your layout, you are allowed to use definitely a different font. So if you think something else would look better there, go for it. And in this case, I think I'm going to go with that as well. That's a good question. Any other questions? So in this case, I'm going to use Arial, my subheadline. Now you can choose to use some stylistic elements. In this case, I could probably choose to use a border. You can use color if you want. Here's another way to incorporate a design element. And you definitely want to design with the rulers and guides on, because it just makes it easier to keep everything together. I'm going to lighten this box up a bit. And I can put some text in there. I can put the date. I could put my byline. So today is September 6th, 2016. By Mrs. Woodland. This is this design. What else is next? I don't know. You could have a few things going on there. Let's see. The other line of text would be more text here. So I've got it all lined up. And I definitely want this to be smaller. Make sure my alignment is on left align, and I don't want any indentation on. Breezy's asking, can we use a different font for the headline? My paper's on Memphis, which is great for headlines. The assignment says to use character styles. Could you also show us where we use that? Absolutely. So great questions, Breezy, all around. Yes, you're allowed to use different font styles. I'm not going to be picky about the fonts that you use for the layout as long as it's on the required list. If your paper is on Memphis, you don't have to use Memphis throughout the design. It's just going to be about Memphis. The only time that you'll use Memphis is if you're designing your portrait. You can't use any other characters other than Memphis. But for the layout, absolutely. So you can set this up stylistically. Character, I kind of showed you earlier with the paragraph styles. Character styles are the exact same thing. So if you go to Window, drop-down menu, click on Styles, Character Styles. This allows you to set up your character styles, like your drop cap or your headline if you're going to be doing multiple pages with multiple headlines. So the first thing you want to do is create a new character style, double click on it. And this one could be basic character formats. You could pick a font family. In this case, mine's going to be Arial. You can set it Arial regular. This will be for my subheadline, okay? My character style 1 will be for my subhead. Or your drop cap. Do a drop cap for your first paragraph. You will not use your drop cap for any other time other than your first paragraph. But in this case, it'll let you pick a size. I'll do size 18. And you can give some other important styles. Character, do I want a color? Sure, I want a color. I'm going to go with red since my colors are black and red. And any underline, strike through, nothing. So I'm going to hit OK. And now I'm going to double click on my first letter of my paragraph. Take this indent off because we don't do an indent for the first paragraph. And then I'm going to click on drop cap. And there it's already formatted for me. Now in this case, I'll probably need to go back and fix it a little bit. Like it needs to be larger, much larger. There we go. And now I've got my drop cap on my first paragraph. So that's a character style, okay? You're just setting up things for your characters. Now headlines and subheadlines, you can do one, add another one. You click new, create new style, double click it. I like to name them so I don't get all confused. This one will be my headline. This is not gonna be drop cap. I'm gonna go to my basic character formats. And this one instead is gonna be Times New Roman. And for my headline, it'll be regular, but my headline's going to be nice and large. So I'm going to choose 50. And any other information that you want to give a color, I'm going to stick with red. Okay, I'm going to hit OK. So now if I want to change my headline to my headline character styles, I can use that instead. The headline definitely needed to be bigger. And you can always go in and change it. 70. Might still be too big. So do you kind of get the gist though? There we go. So that's a good question. So for paragraph style, the way I understand it is going to be using large bodies of text, and you're definitely going to want to be able to use it for large bodies of text, whereas character styles are just if you're going to stylize, if you're going to use multiple paragraphs or multiple pages and you're going to drop cap each page, you're definitely going to want to be able to separate what's just for kind of the one-time use and what's going to be for multiple uses. But that's a good question. So if you want an actual definition, probably a character style is kind of a collection of character formatting attributes that can be applied to text in one single step, whereas a paragraph style includes both character and paragraph formatting attributes. So that can be applied to paragraph or a range of paragraphs. Paragraph styles and character styles are kind of found on separate panels, but they're kind of interchangeably. You're right, you can use character settings in your paragraph styles. It's just kind of staying organized, I guess. So one is applied to text in a single step, whereas a paragraph style includes both the character and paragraph formatting. So it does. That was my old headline when I was demonstrating the drop shadow. I can easily take it off, and I recommend don't do a drop shadow. That was just demonstrating how to do one. So now that you know how, we won't do one. There you go. Thanks, Norma. It's hard to read when there's a drop shadow. Those are good questions, Breezy. So if you want the real definition, there's the definition, but I like to say paragraph styles, yeah, you can accomplish both in paragraph styles, but it's easier if you have a character formatting control. Because think of it, for our paper, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to have them separate. You could probably do it all in the paragraph styles. But if you were doing a book that's like hundreds of pages, and you're going to have a chapter for every 10 pages, you're definitely going to want to separate that headline in your character styles and the drop caps that you're going to be using. The one-time uses are going to be in the character styles, and then the multiple paragraph uses are going to be in the paragraph styles. So it's just another way of staying organized. The long-winded answer, but it's a great question, and you're right. In your paragraph styles, you can do both. But if you notice, in paragraph styles, you can apply character styles and paragraph styles, but in the character styles, you can't apply any paragraph settings to it. So if you look here, if I double click, I'm very limited to my list. Do you see my list? It's only for text options, okay? But if I were to open up my paragraph styles dialog box, now look at my list. It's even more. It not only includes the paragraph formatting, it also includes stuff for my typography as well. It definitely includes a little bit of both. So yeah, so that's okay. It's not right and wrong. What this class is just teaching you is to kind of understand how to set one up. In this case, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to set up the character styles separately from the paragraph styles because we're only doing 1 or 2 pages for our layout. I mean, this probably will end up only being a 1-page layout. But if you were working in the magazine industry or the book industry or anything doing flyers or anything with multi-pages, you definitely are going to want to set up the separate ones and keep them separate because you're going to be setting out so many different styles. So in the long term, I guess if you think ahead, if you're working with mass amounts of text, this is where it would be helpful to have them separate. But in our case, it's only one page, only a few paragraphs of text, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You won't be docked if you did your character style in your paragraph style setting. It's just important to understand that there is a difference and why they are used. So yeah, I mean, in the future, you'll probably need to use them separately. In this assignment, it's not a big deal. I just want to see that you applied a style, that you had one set up, that you, whether it was in the paragraph or the character. So either one will be fine. Good questions. I know it's a little confusing. They're kind of getting ahead of themselves a little bit as we jump into this, but it's good practice to get to know how to set these up. Are there any other questions? Sandy, did you want to share with us your layout? Or I guess it was your portrait? Only if you want to. I wasn't sure if you were, well, I don't want to put you on the spot. Paragraph styles definitely are frustrating because if you are making changes in the body of text that you applied a style to, so in this case, I added the drop cap, right? But if I decide to go and change this to a sans serif font, if I start making changes after I've applied a paragraph style to it, it will apply those changes to that paragraph style. So then when I go to the next paragraph, it's going to already apply those same styles, or it will change it up. And so it gets really confusing. So you definitely want to make sure you don't have something applied to it. You don't have a style applied to your, before you make changes, because it's, or you go into your style to make those changes. So Sandy, if you're up for it, you're welcome to share. I'm not putting you on the spot. I thought you were mentioning it because you wanted to share it, but if it's up to you, we'd love to see it. Perfect. Okay, so I'll close my screen if you want to go ahead and pull up yours. Oh, good. I love it. It looks so good. Very. What font did you use? It looks like Minion Pro was the font of choice. That's awesome. I'm loving it. So how long did it take you to do? Doesn't it look good? Round of applause for Sandy. Excellent job. Great job. Yeah, I'm curious to know how long it took you to do that one, because that one's, yeah, we're all copying for you. Excellent job. I hope you have fun with it, you guys. This is actually a really fun assignment. Don't overthink it. I just want to see that you can think like a designer. Just get a little creative and figure out how you can create a portrait using typography. How it kind of gets you thinking in a different way, how you can make letters turn into art. Few hours. So there you go. So you guys just kind of think how you can apply your time this week. But again, when you're formatting, I'm just going to be looking for basic things. Are things lining up? Use your rulers, okay? And use your alignments. You could either add lines for division, but if you're going to use lines, you want to make sure you have everything evenly spaced. There's a lot that you can do to create some visual interest. So you can design your page any way that you'd like. Just keep it formatted correctly, okay? Are there any other questions regarding the assignment? The grading rubrics will be up if they're not already up tonight. I know I posted one for the assignment 3. I'll post one for the, actually they're both up now that I think of it. And let me show you real quick. Well, let's go into the assignments real quick. All right, so here's assignment 3. The grading rubric is up. Now, please pay attention that that your assessment is designed in InDesign where you're laying out your paper, but the assignment, your face illustration, is being designed in Illustrator. Okay, and it's black and white only. Only approved fonts can be used. Use the typeface that you wrote about. And then there's the grading rubric right there. We'll go to our assessment 3. This one is designed in InDesign, and it's important to point out that I will need both your InDesign document and your PDF. So before we were only submitting a PDF, but in this case, I'm going to need both, okay? And then the rubric will be posted tonight. I'll make sure I get that set up for you guys. In fact, I can do it right now. But are there any questions about the assignments before we leave? Before we part? There we go. Yes, can we submit a zip file? No, submit InDesign and PDF separately if you can do that, okay? If it doesn't let you, then a zip file, but it's easier for grading purposes if they're separate. The download time is less for me for some reason. Okay, yeah, that's a good question. Thanks, Breezy. Any other questions? You did your portrait in InDesign? Okay, you'll probably, let's see, does it specifically ask for Illustrator? I think it asks for Illustrator, so you're gonna need to copy and paste it into Illustrator, okay? It says create it in Illustrator, save it as a PDF. So just copy and paste it. It should copy and paste pretty easily. Now, if you guys have questions, come on Thursday. Even if you don't, you can have me look at it before you submit it, and I can kind of pre-grade some pre-grading feedback for you, kind of critique it. But these should be a pretty easy grade. I mean, I'm not going to hold you to too high standards. We're just going to be having fun with this assignment, basically. But come if you have questions. Let me know if you guys need any help, and I will see you guys on Thursday. Thanks for coming, everybody. I know it's late where you are. Appreciate it. And thanks for your participation. We'll see you guys soon. Good night.